All right. Welcome back. Welcome all of ourselves back. So thank you very much once again for joining me on this wonderful adventure of settling into presence, of being fully present in the lives that we are gifted. Last week, we talked about how you are not a role, you are a soul. How underneath all of the hats that we wear, all of our layers, all the parts we play, there's a self that's just there, just being. And today we're going to talk about a practice that actually lets us touch that self. What my teachers call the sacred pause. And over time, we're going to build a real toolbox together. And there's so many practices, there's so many ways in, and we're going to get to as many as we can. But we want to start simple. My teachers always remind me, keep it simple. So today, we're going to go with one of my favorites, something small, something you could carry in your pocket and use anywhere, because you can know you're a soul and then spend the entire day as a role racing from one thing to the next. And what my teachers call that sacred pause is how we come back. So first, we're starting with why it's so necessary. Why is it such a necessary skill to simply stop? And why is it so hard to do? And the emphasis we're going to be focusing on will be on how we can start learning how to pause specifically in the most stressful parts of our day, because that's when we need to pause most. Pausing isn't just something we add to our to-do list, something to add to our boxes that we need to check. Have you been drinking enough water? It's more about the natural, healthy rhythm of our lives. And unique to this audience, to the goal is soul, family. This behavior and mindset is a fundamental need in our spiritual growth. One of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century, Rollo May, writes, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that freedom is the capacity to pause in the face of stimuli from a lot of directions at once. And in this pause, to throw one's weight toward this response rather than that one. How we pause, or when do we pause? And I'm sure many of us are familiar with one of our heroes, HERE-O's, Viktor Frankl's quote, who writes, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom." And we're going to keep coming back to this quote from Viktor Frankl again and again and again. Because by pausing, we're going to be able to access the freedom to choose how we respond in any situation. We're not going to be trapped in the reactionary mind where we feel compelled to respond in a way that might not be skillful. And without pausing, we don't really feel like we have a choice, because our actions become so reflexive. They become so automatic. And I was thinking, where do we see this from my own spiritual tradition? And the story that came to mind is where the Torah describes how when Jacob was preparing to meet his brother Esav, he was preparing to go to battle with his brother. And he had to take all these precautions. He had to send a gift, he prayed, and he prepared himself. He readied himself for battle. And when he gave the gift, he specifically instructed those who were delivering the gift that when they gave over this gift, he gave a cryptic instruction, which was Revach tasimu bein eder le'eder. When you're giving over these flocks, these sheep, these camels, when you give over these gifts to my brother, create a separation between them. Revach tasimu, make or create a space. And the commentaries on this verse explain that he just wanted to create some sort of optical illusion. He wanted to make the gift seem even bigger. This massive gift should seem like it was even bigger by spacing it out. But one of my spiritual teachings is also Maaseh Avos Siman Lebanim. Everything our forefathers have done is part of our spiritual, soulful, genetic makeup. So what do we learn from this? How is this relevant to us? And what the mystical works speak about, and the point that we're really honing in on, is that in this day and age, in times like these, in the everyday traumas of life, this space, this revach, becomes a purposeful way for us to engage in the deluge, in just the downpour of the day-to-day life, the sorrows and the tribulations of this world. Because if we're not mindful, if we're not present to see how making time intentionally to just pause, then everything just sort of cascades onto us. And when just everything becomes jumbled and we start to feel submersed in this darkness, and we inevitably struggle because it feels like every single thing just piles and bleeds into the other one and blends into it. And we're left gasping for air. And I know this isn't just me. So we need to learn to pause between every single thing, both positive and negative, whatever it is. Pause. Pause. See everything uniquely for what it is, because otherwise it just starts to feel so overwhelming. And it could start to feel like we're being subsumed into darkness. So let's think about this together for a minute. What makes it so hard to pause? Aside from your cell phone, obviously. Do you ever just get caught up? Your kid's asking you, hey, do you have a minute? And you're like, what? I'm in the middle of something here right now, which is probably not as important as that child in front of you right there. And we like to call this the trance, this trance state. This is the trance of doing. And we're going to keep coming back to this foundational point that we are not human doings. We are, at our nature, human beings. And so we all have this capacity to tap into this mode of being, presence. But if we're not careful, if we're not paying attention, our default quickly causes us to lose sight of that. And we once again regress into human doings. And we're so good at doing, we're so driven to do, that we haven't really emphasized, cultivated the ability to not do, the ability to be. And that's often because we don't really know who we are when we aren't doing something. It's quite panic-inducing for some people to just sit and be with your own thoughts. I know people who bring their phone into their shower because, God forbid, they're alone with just the shower and their thoughts. So they're going to be blasting that music. Or think about the last time you were lying in bed trying to fall asleep and see what comes up. It can be quite intimidating and overwhelming. It's like, whoa. Where did all these thoughts come from? Oh, that's right. We didn't even allow ourselves the chance to entertain them because we were kept busy throughout the day. So lying in bed and struggling to fall asleep, and we're going to do some episodes on falling asleep. Suddenly you can't drown out the noise when there's nothing to do anymore. And then we could get to, oh no, something's wrong. I need to do something to always be ready. I have to be vigilant. Something's missing, right? There's a fear of missing out. And so I just want to lean into this a bit. Are you a person who is comfortable doing nothing? And we've become so accustomed to just doing, because who are we when we're not? I'm not even talking about mindlessly scrolling on X or Twitter. That's not doing nothing. I mean actively choosing consciously to simply not do. And we'll talk about this later as well, even cultivating an attitude of non-doing, which is really the underlying current that flows through our Shabbat, our Shabbos, the Sabbath. But here's just an experiment. Stop what you're doing right now. Unless you're driving, then don't stop. But if you're just listening on your phone, can you put this down and just sit still for a moment? And we'll be here when you get back. So what came up for you? What did you feel in your body? Right? The reality is, while it's true we can't spend our lives in this Sabbath mode, in this sacred pause mode, because we need to respond, we need to be active in our lives. But when we paused together just now, did you feel that urge to get back to whatever it was you were doing? Perhaps you said to yourself, this is silly. Or were you able to just take that deep breath and just settle into the moment as it is? Mankind from the beginning of time has been cursed. The original sin and the curse of Cain was, you're going to be someone who's navinad, who's back and forth, constant movement and wandering. So even when we're sitting still, our minds are in constant movement. So a person could be chilling on the beach in Bora Bora and still be stressing about anything. Now, if you've ever built a fire, you can't pack the logs in so tight, right? There needs to be air. There needs to be space for it to burn brightly, for our lives to burn brightly. We need to create those spaces, those moments to just breathe, and we know it intuitively. Just like we need to sleep in order to physically have our full health, we need to have this mental pause to stop the incessant movement, to become aware of the stories that we're constantly creating in our minds, and to have a refuge where there's a deeper kind of wisdom, a deeper kind of knowing that can be felt and move through us. To be in this place of presence, to live in the presence. These will be themes that we're going to be coming back to over and over and over again, because if we don't pause, we get carried into these behaviors, and some of them can be unskillful, and some of them are downright, I hate to say it, I hate to use this word, not good. They could even be bad. The places we get into most trouble is that instead of pausing, rather than pausing, we're just going to get back into our automatic responses. Think about it. How many times have you checked your phone today? And you have no idea, because it's a lot higher than whatever number you thought you just did. We're touching our phone incessantly and doing these types of behaviors that we're not able to just pause and be with each other, to be with one another in conversation. And what research has shown is that even the presence of a cell phone on a table at a meal is going to distract from a person's ability to be present. Just having the phone there, not even being on the phone. And something else that I struggle with and that my clients have shared with me is that when we do pause, when we finally are able to do it, we start to feel so vulnerable about really being seen, about being accepted, about being heard. And that's uncomfortable. That's vulnerable. It's very vulnerable to be in the presence of someone else. So we revert back to those safety behaviors. How's our eye contact doing? How's our ability to listen intently? And we have to get comfortable about being uncomfortable. Again, this isn't wrong or bad per se. It's just uncomfortable. And we'd much rather not feel whatever we're feeling. And then we're once again stuck in that doing mode. And if we're not pausing with one another, really being present with our loved ones, with our family members, with ourselves, it's going to create a lot of distance. Another piece of research shows that in couples therapy, just pausing in the middle of a really intense argument, giving people a 10 to 15-minute break, and they come back into the room, and guess what? They're able to talk about the issue in a calmer, more present and vulnerable way. Nothing else happened in the intervention. There wasn't any therapeutic suggestion. Nothing else happened. No brilliant technique, just simply catching your breath. But because we didn't pause, we got caught, we got hooked in the reactionary behaviors. And we didn't come back to what we're going to call our soul state. And the goal is, obviously, soul, our higher state of being. So rather than tapping into our truest selves, we end up behaving in ways that we regret. And this becomes so apparent when it comes to addictive behaviors that we've gotten caught up in because we didn't pause, and the urge moves right into the grasping. There's no space. You have the urge, you have the desire, you have the thought that you're going to do X, Y, or Z, and then the next thing you know, it's the next bowl of ice cream. It's the online gambling. It's the of that e-cig. Whatever it is, insert your behavioral addiction of choice here. And here's the suggestion. Simply pause to break the cycle. That easy? Easier said than done. Easier done than imagined. So in our spiritual lives, in our own service of God, where we bring in our own fears of not getting where we want to be or wanting to have certain spiritual states and looking around at what other people are doing, and rather than pausing and arriving here, there's a kind of leaning forward, a striving attitude of grasping, of judging. Are we there yet? Is this enough? How am I doing? And that whole attitude is completely antithetical to true spiritual practice. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And this is a practice of freedom. So we need to know how to stop. We need to learn how to stop. We need to remind ourselves to stop. And my teachers have told me, and I invite you to do this sometimes as well, just throughout the day, periodically say to ourselves, say to yourself, stop, pause, not in an authoritarian way, not in a punitive way like we speak to ourselves so often, like telling your kids to stop hitting your sister, stop it. Rather, this is an invitation. Stop. Pause. Breathe. And that's all the pause really is. It's not merely a technique. It's not one more thing to get good at. It's just an invitation to make a little space, to stop being the role for one breath and remember the soul underneath it. So that's what we're going to do together right now. That's what we're going to practice together right now. But before we go into the practice, let's just plant the seed for what we're going to be doing. And there's a poem that I love, and you're going to hear all the poems that I love, by Martha Postlewaite, and it's called Clearing. And it's about the practice of making a small open space in the thick of your life and waiting there until what's truly yours can finally reach you. So let's go make that clearing together. Join me in the soul practice. And whether you do it with me right now or come back to it on your own time, whatever feels best to you, we're going to take this out of the realm of talking and into the body. One breath, one pause, and we'll find out what's actually there in the space when we stop trying to fill it. The goal is soul. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen. Thank you for joining us today on The Goal is Soul. If you enjoyed our time together, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps us bring this and other soulful content into the world. Until we meet again, may you embrace this moment just as it is, and remember that we are all just walking each other home.